Hello and welcome to our journey into history. Today we explore the life of a man who saw the patterns of civilizations before anyone else. A thinker, a scholar, and a pioneer, Ibn Khaldun, the father of sociology and the master of historical philosophy. Let's discover how one mind shaped the way we understand the rise and fall of empires. Origins and early life. In the year 1332, in the beautiful and bustling city of Tunis, a child was born into a noble Arab Andalusian family. His name, Abd al-Rahman ibn Khaldun, a name that would one day echo through the corridors of intellectual history. His ancestors had once lived in Seville, in Muslim Spain, Al-Andalus, before fleeing the Christian reconquest. They settled in North Africa, carrying with them a rich heritage of Andalusian scholarship, refinement, and political prestige. Ibn Khaldun grew up surrounded by books, scholars, and the deep rhythms of Islamic culture. From a young age, his brilliance was undeniable. He studied the Quran, Arabic grammar, jurisprudence, logic, mathematics, and philosophy. His teachers were the best minds of his time, including some who had fled Spain themselves. But even as a boy, Ibn Khaldun was different. He didn't just memorize, he questioned. He looked beneath the surface. He asked why. Why do dynasties rise and fall? Why do great civilizations crumble into dust? His questions were seeds that would one day grow into revolutionary ideas. The 14th century in North Africa was not an easy time. The region was a battlefield of competing dynasties, revolutions, betrayals, and plagues, including the devastating Black Death, which took the lives of many of Ibn Khaldun's family members when he was still young. At just 20 years old, he entered public life. His intelligence quickly earned him positions in the royal courts of Tunis, Fez in Morocco, and later Tlemcen in Algeria. But the politics were ruthless. Ministers plotted, rulers turned paranoid, and alliances shattered overnight. Ibn Khaldun found himself imprisoned, exiled, or forced into hiding multiple times. Yet each time he emerged sharper, wiser, and more determined. His experiences in the courts and palaces became a kind of field research, a front-row seat to the collapse of states and the ambitions of men. He didn't just read history, he lived it, he was part of it. Isolation and the birth of a masterpiece. After years of political turmoil, danger, and disappointment, Ibn Khaldun made a bold decision: to retreat from the noise of politics and dedicate himself to reflection, study, and writing. He found peace in a remote mountain fortress near Khalat ibn Salama in present-day Algeria. For 4 long years he lived in almost total isolation, far from courts, sultans, and the chaos of the outside world. But this was not an escape, it was a rebirth. It was here, in the silence of exile, that Ibn Khaldun began writing his life's greatest work. Al-Muqaddimah, or the Introduction, a groundbreaking prologue to his universal history book, Kitab al-Ibar. But Al-Muqaddimah was not just an introduction. It was a revolution in thought. For the first time, someone looked at history not as a collection of names and dates, but as a science of civilization. In Al-Muqaddimah, Ibn Khaldun asked bold, daring questions. Why do civilizations rise? Why do they decay? What forces shape human behavior? How does geography affect culture? Why does tribal loyalty matter in politics? He believed that history had patterns, and those patterns could be studied, predicted, and understood. He introduced concepts like asabiya, group solidarity, or social cohesion. The cyclical nature of empires, how they grow strong, become rich, grow weak, and eventually collapse. The importance of economics, labor, and production in understanding society. The danger of luxury and corruption in the decline of dynasties. It was as if he stood outside of time, looking down at human history as a living organism, breathing, growing, and dying. Today, scholars consider him the father of sociology, the founder of historiography, and a pioneer of political science. Centuries before, these fields were formally created in the West. Western thinkers like Toynbee, Durkheim, and even Karl Marx would later echo some of Ibn Khaldun's thoughts, often unknowingly. But he did it first, and he did it alone. As Ibn Khaldun aged, his reputation as a brilliant scholar had spread across the Islamic world. He taught, advised rulers, and continued to write and revise his work. Eventually, he settled in Cairo, the intellectual heart of the Mamluk Sultanate, where he was appointed as a judge and professor at Al-Azhar University. Yet fate had one more extraordinary chapter for him. In 1401, the feared Mongol Turkic warlord Tamerlane, Timur, invaded the Levant. Ibn Khaldun, in his 70s, was sent on a diplomatic mission to negotiate with this ruthless conqueror. What happened next was unexpected. Instead of being executed or ignored, Ibn Khaldun impressed Tamerlane with his wisdom and insight. The two men spoke for hours, not about war, but about philosophy, power, and the nature of kingship. Here was a meeting of the pen and the sword, of brute force and brilliant thought. It is said that Ibn Khaldun even wrote a detailed report on Tamerlane's character, one of the most accurate and rare eyewitness accounts of the emperor. His death and legacy. 3 years later, in 1406, Ibn Khaldun passed away in Cairo at the age of 73. He was buried far from his birthplace, but his ideas had already begun to travel much farther. His magnum opus, Al-Muqaddimah, would survive for centuries, copied, translated, quoted, and eventually rediscovered by European thinkers during the Renaissance and Enlightenment. He became, posthumously, what he had always been destined to be, a voice far ahead of his time. And so we close the book on the life of Ibn Khaldun, a man who lived through plague, exile, betrayal, and empire, yet emerged with a vision that still lights the minds of historians, philosophers, and dreamers today. He showed us that knowledge is not just memorization, it's reflection. That history is not just the past, it's a mirror of the present. And that great ideas don't need armies, they need courage, patience, and solitude. So the next time you wonder how civilizations rise and fall, remember the man who saw the pattern and who wrote it down in a quiet room, far from power, with nothing but a pen and a restless, brilliant mind. Thank you for listening. If this story inspired you, don't forget to share it with someone who loves wisdom as much as you do. Until next time, stay curious,